Is this on? Now it is. Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ken Stevenson. I'm president of the board, and I'm here to welcome you on behalf of the program council and the board. And so I would like to welcome you wherever you're from, however you got here, wherever you are in your personal journey, you're welcome here. If you'd like more information about TVUUC, there's a card in the pew or holder in front of you, and you can fill that out and drop it in the basket as we take up the collection, and we'll get back to you. There's also an online version you can see under Staying in Touch. Regarding COVID, we're thankfully continuing it low. So masks are optional, but welcome. If you'd like more information about the Youth Religious Education Program, there's a table in the lobby as you came in. Carol Villaverde was there earlier, I know. And so stop in if you have any questions. I have a number of announcements, and so let me get started. First of all, the last day to vote for the Volunteer of the Month is today. And so the ballot box is in the fellowship hall, or you can vote from the website or the Facebook post about the Volunteer of the Month. We have some amazing volunteers, and so we appreciate these votes and recognizing people that are doing things for the congregation. Also, those online can vote through the website. Next, I want to mention that next Sunday is our first Sunday lunch. It's sponsored by the RE leadership team, and so that will be next Sunday after service. Sign up to bring sides, salads, or dessert. Pizza will be provided, veggie, vegan, gluten-free, and DF options. I don't know what that means. Dairy-free. Okay, thank you. Okay, that brings me to the next announcement. The RE leadership is sponsoring the luncheon next Sunday, and following the luncheon, you're invited to join us as we develop a shared vision for children and youth at TVUUC. How do we best nurture the spiritual growth of our young people? How do we challenge, encourage, and support their desires, needs, and capabilities to transform our world through acts of love and justice. Please join the religious education leadership team, staff, and board members in a visioning process designed to engage the full church community, that's us, and those online, the full church community, as we consider what is needed to help our beloved young people connect more fully with the life of our TVUUC community. That's connecting with our programs, with Unitarian Universalism. We need all of you longtime members, as well as newcomers, elders, and non-parenting adults, as well as parents and young participants in our programs. 3 opportunities are offered for engaging in this visioning process. Attend as few or as many as you like. You need not attend all. I plan to be there next Sunday. We'll have, after the pizza party plus potluck, we'll be meeting from 1 to 2 in this visioning process. So I'll be there, and I encourage any of you who would like to get into that process to join us. Also, there will be a Zoom meeting April 11th, that's Tuesday, April 11th at 7 p.m., and Wednesday, April 12th at 8:30. And the Zoom link can be found on the, I'm not sure if it's on the order of service or on the newsletter. So you can also see Catherine or one of the religious education leaders. My next announcement, sorry, it's a long list of announcements today. After the service today at 1 p.m. in the Lizzie Crozier-French room, we'll have Starting Point, an introduction to UU journey, and all are welcome, both those who are new to the congregation and those who would like to find out more about UUism. I would also say that Justice Knox has a sign-up board in the lobby, and so Justice Knox has a special meeting tomorrow at 7 p.m. at First Presbyterian Church. And so this meeting is preparing for the Nehemiah Action, which is, I believe, April 25th. And so there's a sign-up board out there, and you can see Greer, Novinger, Polly Murphy, or Ruth Horton to talk about signing up for the attendance at the Nehemiah meeting. Thank you. I think that's all the announcements. Join us after service for coffee and conversation, and it's a nice day, it looks like, to get out onto the patio. So please join us there. And now if you'd silence your electronic devices so that we can enter into worship. Thank you.
Our opening words are from Paul Dudenoff. The freedom to doubt, to question, to be content, to live in mystery is central to the liberal religious journey. Like the process of evolution itself, the path that we follow, our practice, if you will, is not easy or simple. It isn't without dead ends or disappointments. It doesn't guarantee that all our conclusions will be final and we will ever find an answer to all our questions. But also, like the process of evolution, it is filled with great expressions of beauty and awe that are sometimes born of great struggle and at other times with unexpected grace. Come, let us worship together.
Please join in singing the hymn found in your insert, and you can find the text of the verses in the gray hymnal under 650. Susan and I will be singing those verses, and we just ask that you sing the refrain listed in the program.
Cherish your doubts, for God is the attendant of truth. Doubt is the key to the door of knowledge. It is the servant of discovery.
A belief which may not be questioned binds us to error, for there is incompleteness and imperfection in every belief.
Cherish your doubts, for God is the attendant of truth. Doubt is the touchstone of truth. It is an acid which eats away the false.
Let no one fear for the truth, that doubt may consume it, for doubt is a testing of belief.
Cherish your doubts, for God is the attendant of truth. The truth stands boldly and unafraid. It
from home or from other spaces in the building, welcome. It is good to be here. So we just sang a song, and the refrain was, "Cherish your doubts, for doubt is the attendant of truth." And that is one of the values that we hold as Unitarian Universalists. And I have a story to share this morning that is about doubt and certainty. And it's a true story. So a couple of hundred years ago, particularly in North America and in Europe, people were doing a lot of digging in the ground and finding things that they found useful. Is there anybody here who likes to dig in the ground? Have you ever found anything interesting in the ground when you were digging? Yeah. Worms. What else have you found? A clay pot. You found a clay pot when you were digging in the ground. Anything else? Has anybody found something interesting in the ground? Yes. A bicycle frame. Oh my goodness. Artifacts. Yeah. Yes. Red clay and rocks. Yeah. So in those days, yes. A penny. Yeah, what have you found in the ground? Tennessee Valley clay. Yeah. So people were digging and finding things like nickel that they used for tools and all kinds of things, and coal, which they began to burn for fuel. And they found something also in places that had something called marl. They found marl, and it was kind of a gray, clay-like substance that was full of something called calcium carbonate, which is also known as garden lime. And they found that it was really good for fertilizer. So it would help things grow in people's gardens and on farms when they wanted to grow things. And so people began to, when they found areas with a lot of this gray marl, would start to dig it up so they could bring it to sell at markets, and people would buy it. And people who owned land where there was a lot of marl would sometimes hire workers to dig a lot of it. And so there began to be things called marl pits. And when people were digging up the marl, that thick clay turned out to be a really great place to find things when they were digging. And like many of you said, they found things that were interesting to them. And they started to find things like seashells and bits of bone and even big skulls of creatures they didn't recognize. And workers who were working in the marl pits, well, those things that were found weren't what they were being paid to collect, and so they would sometimes bring those things home and show them to people, and they found them really interesting. Now, scientists and people who were studying those things that were being collected started to have some ideas that were a little bit different than what a lot of people believed those days, because a lot of people thought that the world had been created about 6,000 years ago, and they believed in a God who had created all the animals in 6 days. But there was a scientist who started putting together bits of bones that had been found, and he came up with an idea that was really astonishing to people. He said that if you put those bones together, they belong to giant lizards. Does anybody think there might have been giant lizards that lived once upon a time? And he referred to them as dinosaurs. Have we ever heard of dinosaurs? Yeah. Nobody had ever seen a dinosaur, and a lot of people said, that is ridiculous. We've never seen such a thing. That never existed. And in fact, the story that I've been told all my life about what happened was there was like a great flood. Has anybody heard the story about a giant flood that might have been told? Noah's Ark. And all the animals that didn't make it on the ark, well, this evidence that you're finding must be animals from the flood, but there weren't giant lizards, because giant lizards aren't mentioned anywhere in the Bible, so they must not have existed. That's what a lot of people thought. Now, one day, in 1839, so almost 200 years ago, a man named William Hopkins had workers digging in a marl pit that he had in his backyard, And the workers found a giant, almost complete skeleton. It had everything except the skull, and it was bigger than a house. And the workers came and asked him what to do, and he said, well, leave it be, just dig around it, leave it alone, because he was most interested in the marl. And there it was, and it sat and it stayed in his backyard for 20 years, and he didn't really think about it again. And then about 20 years later, he had a friend over for dinner, and his friend was somebody who was very interested in these bones and these kinds of things. And William Hopkins wanted to impress his friend, also named William Folk, and told him about the giant skeleton in his backyard. Do you think his friend was interested in the giant skeleton? Yeah. He came back the very next day to see this for himself, and he became so excited that he asked for permission to have people come and dig it out and excavate it, and it was taken out of the ground and assembled, and it was the first nearly complete dinosaur skeleton found and recognized in the world. And it was taken and displayed at the Natural History Museum in Philadelphia, and that became the proof that many people began to accept that dinosaurs really had existed, because instead of different little separate bits of bone that didn't come from the same animal, and people said, well, you're putting it together in a way that, like, you think makes sense, but maybe they didn't really come from the same thing after all. This was a full, almost full skeleton. And that is part of the story where people started to be a little bit more open. Because if you have doubts, that is a way of saying the things we think we know for sure, there might be more that is true that we don't understand yet. And so that is one story about a way in which doubt helped us understand more about our world. And is there anybody here who likes learning about dinosaurs? So we can say thank you to the giant skeleton found in William Hopkins' backyard, and thank you to William Folk, who found it so interesting that he had it brought out and helped us understand more about our world. And that is our story for this morning. And so our learners and leaders who are heading to our religious exploration spaces will now head out as we sing our recessional. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I was told that this reading that I'm about to read reminded this person of me because I was someone who doesn't pray. And then I was told by my loving husband, who's a scientist, that I did pray every day when I said goodbye. So he shared the history of the word goodbye with me and made this a little bit easier for me to read to you all today, which is the humanist rosary. If humanists had a rosary, it might sound like something that expresses gratitude for human achievements and values without invoking any divine authority or intervention. For example, we are thankful for the gift of reason that allows us to explore and understand the world. We are thankful for the gift of freedom that allows us to choose our own paths and goals. We are thankful for the gift of compassion that allows us to empathize and cooperate with others. Or we are thankful for the gift of creativity that allows us to express ourselves and enrich our lives. We are thankful for the gift of diversity that allows us to appreciate and learn from different perspectives. We're also thankful for the gift of resilience that allows us to overcome challenges and grow from them. We're thankful for the gift of hope that allows us to envision and work for a better future. Amen.
Good morning. My name is David Massey. I'm a member of the spiritual care team. Among other things, we answer TVUUC's pastoral care line during the day and early evening 7 days a week and respond to phone messages as soon as we hear them. That number, 865-297-3155, is in your order of service and in the weekly newsletter. Anyone is welcome to call anytime if you would like to share something on your mind or in your heart. These calls are confidential, even within the spiritual care team. This is also the number to call if you wish to have a joy or concern shared with the congregation on Sunday morning or in the newsletter or with the pastor. It's also the number to call if you need a ride to a medical appointment, meals brought in while recovering from illness or surgery, companionship for a loved one while you take a break, a visit to yourself or a loved one in a home or care facility. So after the service today and every Sunday, please stop by the caring table in the Greg McKendry Fellowship Hall to add your name to the messages of support that will be mailed to those in need of our good wishes. Faye Joyce and Diana Fields are volunteering at that table today. Caring for one another is a practice that is by no means limited to the spiritual care team or the caring table. In fact, the entire congregation is a spiritual care team. For ours is a welcoming community where we find connection, a spiritual community where we find meaning, a sharing community where our joys are amplified, a caring community where our sorrows are lessened. So let us take this moment to reflect on our joys and sorrows and acknowledge the mutual support of our community. Our hearts go out to Tina Becker, whose 92-year-old father, Kenneth Larson, died last Wednesday in Champaign, Illinois, where Tina grew up. He had entered hospice care the day before, just the day before. Kenneth was a geologist who taught his daughter and two sons how to dig in the dirt, to find geodes and fossils while rock hunting on family vacations. Tina's mother is in assisted living and doing okay. Clarence Morrison reports that his wife Charlotte is now able to receive visitors at the Morning Point Memory Care Facility in Powell. Charlotte is getting adjusted to her new surroundings, and visitors would certainly brighten her days. We are also mindful of all that Clarence has been through. Let's keep him in our hearts as well. We wish safe travels to Judy and Gordon Gibson, who are traveling to Seattle this week to attend a memorial service for Judy's brother. Bob Moore died 3 years ago, but due to pandemic restrictions, Bob's son and family are only now able to travel from Japan. I just want to also remind everybody that the memorial service for Tofi Touchton is Saturday, April the 8th at 1 p.m. And finally, we are mindful this morning of Mark Mahundro, who is homesick. And that may be because he spent a lot of sleepless nights over the previous week organizing a trip to Nashville to lobby in favor of reproductive rights, along with Carol Villaverde, Gail Anderson, Greer Novinger, Ken Stevenson, and Reverend Laurel Bogle. Their act of service for social justice is just an example of the social justice work that goes on in this congregation, officially and unofficially by individuals, and that is a joy that we share this morning. For all these joys and concerns that are spoken as well as those that are unspoken and unknown, we send our love and light out into the world.
We are sending you light to heal you, to hold you. We are sending you light to hold you in love. We are sending you light to heal you, to hold you. We are sending you light to hold you in love.
I'm not used to being up here twice in one day. The second reading I have for you all is the Humanist Rosary 2. And this is about celebrating the wonder of life that emerged from natural processes and evolved over billions of years. We celebrate the wonder of humanity that emerged from our common ancestors and developed diverse cultures and civilizations. We celebrate the wonder of knowledge that emerged from our curiosity and inquiry and expanded in our understanding of ourselves and the universe. We celebrate the wonder of morality that emerged from our social nature and reflection and guided our actions and interactions. We celebrate the wonder of art that emerged from our imagination and expression and beautified our existence and experience. We celebrate the wonder of love that emerged from our emotions and relationships and connected us with others and ourselves. We celebrate the wonder of progress that emerged from our creativity and collaboration and improved our conditions and prospects.
Let us take a moment to enter into silent meditation and worship together. Amen.
Please remain seated to sing hymn 88, Calm Soul of All Things. Hymn 88.
Come, soul of all things, make it one to feel amid the city's dark. There abides a peace of thine, I did not make and cannot harm. The will to neither strive nor cry, the power filled with others give. Upon me, Lord, nor let me die before I have begun to live.
We'll now have our offering. The many different ways to give are available in your order of service. And we will now learn about our special collection for today. Oh, there, come on.
So as Chris said, yes, in your order of service, there's lots of ways to give. If you're online, easiest way to give is to text give. 73256, type in the number TVUUC and the amount that you would like to give. Today's offering is a share the plate, which means it will be split between our organization, which is the Lonsdale Environmental Camp at Tremont, and the general operating fund of TVUUC. So Dave Ostermeyer is going to tell you a little more about the Lonsdale camp. Thank you.
Good morning. So those of you who don't know, Lonsdale is an inner city school in Knoxville, and this church has been associated with that school for at least 2 decades, providing different kinds of support. Lonsdale is an immigrant community. The school, about 90% of the school kids are Hispanic, and that has increased significantly in the last decade. This leaves the possibility, it's a challenge for these kids and their families as immigrants. That challenge hasn't gotten any easier in the last few years. So a lot of times these kids feel kind of alone, even though they're surrounded by people that they know in the larger community. Tremont is a residential program where in this particular program the kids go there for 2 nights and 3 days, and they sleep there, they have their meals there, and of course they're surrounded by the Great Smoky Mountains because Tremont is located right in the park. Most of these kids have not been, a lot of the kids have not been out of Lonsdale, let alone outside of Knoxville, let alone in a place like the Smokies. So it's really initially almost a shock for them, but they get into it very, very quickly. It's more than just an opportunity to get the kids in nature, which is of course the primary focus. However, it's also very much a building experience with the teachers, the camp staff, and with each other. The camp staff loves to have the Lonsdale kids. One of the camp staff individuals told me, more than any other group, Lonsdale kids seem to blossom more at this camp. And I think one of the reasons for that is that they have so much further to grow. So the experiences last beyond the camp throughout because they can, the teachers can use that to bring things into the classroom for the rest of the year. And also these kids then take with them into, these are 5th graders, so they take this with them into their years beyond elementary school. As I was listening to David talk about the caring community of this church, it reminds me to some degree, it just hit me how consistent it is with what the camp staff and the teachers try to create and do create at the Tremont camp with these kids. I'm going to read you some things that we've met with teachers kind of doing focus groups about what they found. Under the item of student-student relationships, this is quote, "The kids get to be themselves and be silly and support each other. They are kids who might never have a sleepover with each other on their own. As the kids go to middle school, they form strong relationships with each other. They can take care of each other now and understand one another differently. New bonds formed across racial lines. The kids are hanging out with each other in ways that they wouldn't have otherwise. Our kids are systemically, geographically separated. At Tremont, though, that separation doesn't exist. They all eat together, they stay in the same room with each other. Those dividing lines don't exist anymore." Student-teacher relationships. In the Tremont Challenge, which is a challenge for the teachers, The teachers were hesitant to do it, but the kids were cheering us on. So it was such a big deal for us to do something out of our comfort zone and for the kids to see us willing to take a risk and go outside of our comfort zone. We showed kids that they weren't alone, that we all get nervous sometimes, and our kids got to cheer us on and build that relationship. These changes are dynamic. That's huge. Nature identity. I feel like it really changed some of my kids' opinions of nature. If I had asked my kids if they wanted to take a hike, they would have said no. It's not a sport. It's not something that seems immediately fun. But now they're excited to be outside, to get dirty, to get their hands in the ground, to find critters under rocks, and to really get out in nature. It taught them how to release their boundaries. So, I thank you for your support. It's really important for these kids. Thank you very much.
Richard Dawkins is best known as an outspoken atheist. He's the author of the book, The God Delusion, and he seems to take a particular amount of pleasure in intellectually jousting with fundamentalists on radio shows and television talk shows. And yet he is also the kind of person who would write these words. He wrote, "When I lie on my back and look up at the Milky Way on a clear night and see the vast distances of space and reflect that these are also vast differences of time as well, when I look at the Grand Canyon and see the strata going down through periods of time which human mind can't comprehend, I am overwhelmingly filled with a sense of almost worship. It is not worshiping anything personal. It is a feeling of sort of abstract gratitude that I am alive to appreciate these wonders. When I look down a microscope, it's the same feeling. I'm grateful to be alive to appreciate these wonders. So this morning I want to talk about all of those human emotions that transport us to that place of almost worship. Those moments when we stand on the edge of an awe-inspiring ocean, caught in the rapture of the majesty of the sea and the power of crashing waves, but we're not quite ready to jump in yet. I want us to reflect on those moments that are almost but not quite worship. Now, when I was a director of religious education here back in the 1990s, Lois Southworth came to every adult education class that I ever attended. Lois, of blessed memory, when she was alive, she described herself as a little old lady. And she would come to every class I took, and at the time, her adult son, Buice Southworth, a Unitarian minister, was known as quite an accomplished Unitarian theologian who wrote books about Henry Nelson Wyman and empirical theology. But Lois was a very down-to-earth humanist. In one adult education class, we were going around the room, and I asked everyone to tell a story or share a memory about some time when they felt reverence or awe. And someone described walking on the beach as the sun rose over the ocean and all the colors that came out. And another person talked about walking along the ridge of a mountain in the Smokies and looking at the mist sort of swirling around in the valley. And another person talked about holding her newborn baby child in her arms for the first time. And when it came time for Lois, she was quiet for a minute, and then she said, "I don't know. I guess I'm just a good Unitarian. I take everything for granted." I share this story because the Unitarian Universalist Church does include many different kinds of people. Some of us worship, some of us almost worship, and some of us aren't even able to summon up those kinds of feelings. In the last board meeting, as things were winding down, Mary Rogie, a member of the board, bid us all adieu by saying, "Secular blessings." We all find different words to express the beliefs that we have inside. Today's reading, the Humanist Rosary, came because David Asbury typed into an artificial intelligence machine and said, what would a humanist rosary be? That's your reading. We have different ways of finding different words to express our deeply held convictions. Now, one of my favorite scriptures comes from the Rig Veda, the ancient Indian scriptures, and they tell us this: who knows the truth? Who can tell us whence and how this universe arose? The gods are later than its beginning. Who knows, therefore, whence comes this creation? Only God knows. Only the God who is in the highest heaven knows. Or perhaps God doesn't know either. Another ancient Indian scripture, the Upanishads, teach us that we should reverence what cannot be spoken with word, but whereby words are spoken. What cannot be thought with the mind, but whereby the mind thinks. What cannot be seen with the eye, but whereby the eye sees. What cannot be heard with the ear, but whereby the ear hears. What cannot be indrawn with the breath, but that whereby breath is indrawn. This is what we should reverence. And this may or may not be what other people adore. Religion can never be a social construction where we just go along with the crowd. It needs to be a deeply felt, meaningful, personal experience. Jean Wahl, a philosopher from France in the 20th century, staked out a position between atheism and theism. He put forth the idea of agnostic mysticism. Agnostic mysticism, where theism says there is a God and atheism says there is no God. This position of agnostic mysticism says, since the absolute is unknowable, all we can do is have a reverent relationship with the unknowable. All we can do is have a reverent relationship with the unknowable. When we are confronted by the insoluble mystery of human existence, we should embrace that insolubility. Acknowledging the partiality of all thought and the limitations of every conception, he argued that all that can be thought is attached to the unthinkable, as all that is visible is attached to the invisible, and all that one understands is attached to what can never be understood. The challenge of a philosopher is to realize that the solution is to stop looking for a solution. Since the absolute is unknowable, all we can do is enter into a reverent relationship with the unknown. And we are in a relationship with the absolute whenever we're in a relationship with all that exceeds ourselves. All that exceeds ourselves. I'm reminded of that moment in the book Roots by Alex Haley, where Kunta Kinte's father holds the baby up into toward the heavens and says, "Behold, the only thing greater than yourself." The only thing greater than yourself. The absolute is all that exceeds ourselves. Now, there may be different concepts about the absolute. There may be different theologies and philosophies about the absolute, but an encounter with the absolute can generate some of the same feelings, regardless of what we believe, regardless of what we think. In other words, we will never reach the absolute through our head. We will never reach the absolute through our knowledge. We will reach it through our feelings. And even though the absolute is by definition something much larger than ourselves, it is present in every little thing in the cosmos. Now, earlier this month, I heard an interview with Neil deGrasse Tyson. He was interviewed about the 6 new galaxies that have been discovered by the James Webb Space Telescope that are forcing scientists to rethink all their theories about the origins of galaxies. Did you even know that we discovered 6 new galaxies in the recent times? As one scientist remarked, we've discovered something so unexpected that it actually creates problems for science. It calls the whole picture of the early galaxy formation into question. Now, Tyson was asked about that statement about the discovery causing problems for science, and he offered to reframe it. He said, "This kind of discovery doesn't create problems for science, it generates excitement. It generates excitement. It generates a new understanding of the universe. We delight in this," he said. "We delight in this. We shouldn't be surprised that we're surprised. We should expect to encounter the unexpected." He said, when people say that scientists have to go back to the drawing board, they don't even understand science because we live at the drawing board. We live at the drawing board. when the interviewer asked him, so this discovery upends everything we know about the origins of galaxies. What are you thinking now? And he said, I don't know. And there's nothing wrong with not knowing. What Tyson says about the science of the universe, the philosopher Jean Wahl says we should say about religion. We should never be afraid to say, we don't know. And there's no problem with not knowing. We often get the impression that faith and doubt are opposites, that faith is at war with our doubts and our doubts are at war with our faith. However, there cannot be faith without doubt. As the scriptures say, we walk by faith, not sight. Or as the philosopher Pascal put it, if we could never act except on the basis of a certainty, we could never act because nothing is certain. Nothing is certain. Faith is about how we live in the face of uncertainty. Faith is about how we move through the unknowable. And as we move through the unknowable, we can still do some important things together. We can be thankful for the gift of reason. We can be thankful for the gift of freedom. We can be thankful for the gift of compassion. We can celebrate the wonder of life and the wonder of humanity and the wonder of knowledge. And we can gather together, as many of us are planning at the Justice Knox rally, gather together to rally and work for justice and peace on this earth. There is so much we can celebrate together as we face the unknowable. Earlier I mentioned Mary Rogy's dispensation of secular blessings to her fellow members of the board. And it reminded me of an old story about a man who was very proud that he had bought a Prius. He was very proud of it because he did it for ecological reasons and environmental reasons and reduced dependency on oil. And so he brought the Prius to a Catholic priest and said, I bought a Prius and I want you to perform a blessing on it. And the priest said, oh, I'm very happy to help you, but what is a Prius? The man was totally offended by how out of touch the priest was. So he goes to the Baptist church and he asks the preacher, he says, I've bought a Prius and I want you to perform a blessing on it. And the preacher says, oh, I'm happy to help, but what's a Prius? And so he's disgusted with that. He's disgusted with the lack of ecological awareness. And so he goes to the Unitarian Universalist church and he says to the minister, I bought a Prius and I want you to perform a blessing on it. And the Unitarian minister says, I'm happy to help. What's a blessing? In conclusion, I want to say I have always loved this joke, even as I've never felt that it quite fit who we are, because it is a blessing to be together. It's a blessing to be together this morning, either on person or online. It is a blessing to work together on our shared vision to transform this world through acts of love and justice. It is a blessing to celebrate together, to sing together, to laugh together. I agree with Rabbi Abraham Heschel, who said, simply to be is a blessing. Simply to live is holy. Indeed, it is so much of a blessing that I am tempted to almost worship. So be it. Let's join together in our closing hymn, 298, in the gray hymnal, Wake Now My Senses. celebrates your liberating ministry. Go forward in the power of love, proclaim the truth that makes us free. As our last act of worship, I invite you to turn and greet your neighbor.